Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm music journalist Thomas Mooney, and this is New Slang. You're listening to episode 183, where I'm joined by the legendary singer-songwriter Joe Ely. In case you missed it, this is the second in a three-part series where I'm joined by the Flatlanders. Episode 182 was on Monday, and that was with Jimmie Dale Gilmore, and this coming Friday is episode 184 with Butch Hancock. And of course, this one right here, the middle episode, is with Joe Ely. I'd highly encourage y'all to listen to these in order of Jimmy, Joe, and Butch. They were recorded that way, so I was able to bring up things that Jimmy said to Joe, and then of course, Jimmy and Joe to Butch. And then also, I was able to let some of those things simmer and to get a little bit better of a picture going forward. Obviously, we talk about the Flatlanders' history and their new album, Treasure of Love, which is out this Friday, July 9th. That should be a given. But as I mentioned during the intro of the episode with Jimmy, there's such a rich and distinct and unique catalog within each of their careers. And that's really what makes the Flatlanders the Flatlanders. The Flatlanders work in 1990 and going forward from that moment because they were such acclaimed solo artists by that point. I don't think it's a stretch to say that the three individuals who started the Flatlanders in the 70s, they are different people whenever the Flatlanders picks back up in the 90s. There was growth and expansion and these twists and turns for each of them in their careers. And I think Joe maybe had the most interesting solo career of the three. He's had the most solo albums, he's been a part of other groups as well. And throughout the years, he's had what I would guess what we'd call phases within the big picture. I'll use that lazy puzzle analogy here. Each of those phases, whether that would be like one record or four records, they're all important puzzle pieces that show the overall picture. I won't spoil which of these phases that we touched on, but we did talk about a lot of my favorite moments within the Joe Ely catalog. So I do also want to make a little note. This episode is essentially split into two parts. That first part, we did it on Zoom, while the second was on the phone. Long story short, we were having a little bit of trouble with Zoom at the end of that first part, so we ended up switching over to phone call. Today's presenting partner is our pals over at Desert Door Texas Sultal. If you've been listening to New Slang for really any amount of time, you'll know that Desert Door is one of my all-time favorite premium, high-quality spirits. If you haven't or aren't sure what exactly a Sultal is, I'm going to let you in on a little secret that's going to up the game on your liquor cabinet. For starters, the best reference point that I can point you to is to think about a tequila or a mezcal. Do you feel that Western desert, that Texas ruggedness? Okay, Sultal is like that, but a little bit more refined, smooth, and fragrant. It intrigues the palate and offers these hints of vanilla and citrus. There's an earthiness that often sends me right back to my Trans-Pecos and Far West Texas roots. There's plenty to love about Desert Door. For me, it all starts right there. A close second is just how versatile Desert Door really is. You can go full highbrow and experiment with concocting a variety of cocktails that call for muddling fresh fruit, sprigs of thyme, sticks of cinnamon. It's perfect for that world. If you're a little bit more down home, if you've just rolled up the sleeves of your denim Wrangler button-up, it's perfect for that as well. If you're just desiring something that's short and sweet, it hits the mark every time. Desert Door is genuine and authentically West Texan. It's inherently West Texan. They harvest Sultal plants out in the wild and are knowledgeable conservationists at heart. That's obviously something incredibly important to me. They shine a light on what makes West Texas special and unique and worth preserving and keeping it safe from exploitation. Right now, you can find Desert Door all over Texas, Colorado, Tennessee, and there's budding numbers in places like New Mexico, Arizona, California, and Georgia. Best thing you can do is to check out desertdoor.com to find where Desert Door is locally. Again, that's desertdoor.com. If this is your first time listening to New Slang, we would appreciate it if you go ahead and give us a follow. If you're on Apple Podcasts, leave one of those 5-star reviews. Of course, super grassroots around here at New Slang, so telling all your buddies and pals and friends and family about New Slang, that really does go a long way. Go follow us on all the social media stuff. All the links that I just mentioned, they will be in the show notes as well. Check out the merch store. That's newslangpodcast.bigcartel.com. T-shirts, koozies, all that kind of stuff right over there. Anyway, I don't want to ramble on too much. Let's get on to the episode. Here is Joe Ely. Talked with Jimmie, I guess, last week about the project. So that was a great experience. And I loved how I've been able to get all three of you individually. Because I think like that way you guys can ramble on.
In my life, looking back on it, that was a songs on this record, those and so a very important part of growing up. And when I put a band guitar at night of some tape recorder, I didn't have any other way to get it, so I'd write the lyrics as fast as I could, and I'd always remember the melody because I was always played some kind of instrument when I was growing up. So yeah, that's a good question, because that was my earliest memories of capturing songs and taking them and putting them in another place so that they could be portable.
Yeah, it seems like a very magical time in this world where that I guess this interesting time when very regional, everyone kind of still feels like a part of tapping into and showing off what's happening musically to all these essentially kids and people in their 20s, and showing them that there's regional music and there's all this other great stuff that's happening in other parts of the country and world.
Yeah, we were fortunate to have that regional feeling to everything, because I mean, back when we were growing up in the 60s and 70s, and well, even the last part of the 50s with rockabilly and stuff. But it was I don't know, just Lubbock to Mexico, where Wolfman was 400 and something miles, and Wolfman's power, he had a 100-watt station out of Mexico, and so it would reach halfway across the United States in both directions. It changed probably very little from Wolfman's original, his original radio show every night. But and something made that even more,
something attached to, I guess, this time period is that since, from before this period, especially if you're growing out here in West Texas, your parents were working agriculture, or you're working in a real small kind of industry way, but then all of a sudden you're tapped into the other parts of the world, and then you're tapped into once you become an adult, being able to travel anywhere, right? And it's kind of amazing where there's this like this rapidness in technology, but you also have this one foot in the past where you're talking like you still have all these memories and this tradition from family who what I'd kind of call the calloused hands generation, right, of being at like working hard hours out with in an agricultural sense. And you guys have all, like, especially you, but like the Flatlanders in general, people from Lubbock have always been in both worlds in a sense. Did you guys feel like even back when you guys were playing in the 70s that you guys were doing this, or is that something that, is it just now that whenever you look back that you kind of realize that we were singing songs that were, going into the future, but then also, paying homage to the past?
Well, yeah. When I was a kid, my daddy had a used clothing store down on Broadway in Lubbock, and he would hire me on the weekends to come help him because Lubbock being an agricultural huge cotton town, on the weekends downtown Lubbock would 30,000 people would come to downtown Lubbock and do their used clothes shoppings, because my daddy had a used clothes store called the Disabled American Veterans Store, and it was where people donated all kinds of things that we sold in that store for, real reasonable. And it was like those were people that came up from down in Mexico every year. Tens of thousands of people would come and buy their work clothes, their groceries, what they needed. And it was, my daddy taught me a little Spanish, and I learned a little Spanish enough to communicate, and put me on the cash register selling, used clothes stores to the migrant workers. And outside the front door of that used clothes store was just, you might as well have been in Mexico, because it was like there were bands on the corner, accordion bands and bajos, and it was just such a whole different culture than Lubbock, that it opened a door that I didn't know existed. And they all, the workers worked out on the like some of my relatives had cotton farms, and they needed cotton pickers and stuff. So I had all of these connections to the past, where I actually did, wear calluses on my hands and stuff from lifting those bales of used clothes. And so I look at that as very much where an inspiration, where the subject matter of a lot of my songs came from, was working and living and fighting to to keep alive. And that was especially getting to know Woody Guthrie songs during that time made a big turning point to me when I was a teenager.
Yeah, I have a friend who often talks about how it always takes that one person who's, as you kind of said, like just 1 degree away from like the people who are working hard, because they don't necessarily have like the time to or maybe like the ability to take and make their story into a song. And it takes obviously an artist or a special person to be where you're able to tap into those experiences, but then also you have the resources in yourself to make that into an actual song or a novel or whatever the case, whatever medium you're looking at.
Yeah, that's the same person can look at the same scene and see a whole bunch of different things. One like sees the emotional part of it, and one sees the social part of it. And there's all these different parts of this same scene. Like in Lubbock, the scene is just flat as a skillet.
Mm-hmm.
And see a story there, because there's basically, some people just look at that and that's a bunch of emptiness, but to fill it with song, or fill it with a story, or something from yourself, from your own soul, if you put that in it, then it can become something that people relate to, and it can go on into the world. be picked up by other people along the way, and add to it, change it, put their own stamp on it, and then toss it out into the big wide open.
That's something interesting you said there, as far as the emptiness out here in West Texas, in Lubbock, that void, that empty space, right? In the past, when I've talked to someone like Terry Allen, he's always talked about how that space kind of affected even the way his songs sound, where I guess maybe sometimes people want to fill in a song with just so much stuff sonically and make it filled up. And I guess like one of the things that he always talked about was how space is even a sound. Emptiness is a sound. How important do you feel like that's been to understand that, like that can be something that affects your music, and even just a little pause is necessary in a song?
Yeah. Well, I overlook my songwriting life as different times required different kinds of emptiness, and then there were some times that all that emptiness dried up, and all of a sudden it was like everything was going on at once in this song, in my life, and that had to be translated into a song too. So I had to drop the one world and go into another world in order to keep, I guess, traveling for me was, of course, leaving Lubbock, going out into the world. But then I went to New York City when I was 17, and all of a sudden that was a whole other kind of song,
Mm-hmm.
And I think I kind of learned by doing that. And then after going to New York City, this was when I was about 18 or 19. I joined a theater troupe and played guitar in a band in this theater troupe that had come to Europe from the University of Texas. And all of a sudden I was putting songs together for a different country, a different city, a different life. But I'd find myself, this is interesting, whenever I'd start on a new record, I'd always come back to West Texas. That seemed to be a starting point for me. And that was like, excuse me. That was like always kind of a new starting point for working on a new record or even just a song. And that's I have that same feeling.
Yeah, the just always having that foundation of the South Plains for something. Yeah, that's something that you can obviously see in so much of your music. This episode of New Slang is brought to you by the Blue Light Live here in Lubbock, Texas. Blue Light has long been the heart and soul of the Lubbock singer-songwriter scene and has been a home away from home for some of Texas, Americana, country, and rock and roll's finest over the years. Talk with 99.9% of the songwriters who have come out of Lubbock and the Panhandle at large over the past 20 years, and they'll point to just how integral and necessary the Blue Light is. With live music and touring slowly but surely coming back, spots like the Blue Light are getting back to their usual ways as well. That means music every night of the week. Do you want to see that schedule? Well, I've got a few options for you. 1, go to their socials and give them a follow. That is at Blue Light Live on Twitter, at The Blue Light Live on Instagram, and of course by just searching The Blue Light Live on Facebook. They're consistently posting that week's lineup of shows, as well as those heavy hitters that ought to be on your calendar that are coming up on the horizon. 2, check out bluelightlubbock.com as well. There they have the full schedule, the cover charges, time, any of those specials that may be happening. While there, go check out their merch page. They have a wide range of hats, koozies, hoodies, sweaters, beanies, jackets, and so much more. You can, of course, get all of your merch needs when you go see your favorite band take the stage at Blue Light. Just ask the bartender and they will get you all set. Speaking of which, that's another great way of seeing who's playing there. Just go to the Blue Light. It's at 1806 Buddy Holly Avenue here in Lubbock, Texas. And of course, again, that is bluelightlubbock.com. I'll throw a link into the show notes too. Maybe I'll see you there. Okay, let's get back to the show. You mentioned just a minute ago, like how you'd kind of go into these different worlds, these different realms, depending on what was happening in your life. And one of the things I've always really appreciated about your catalog is that evolution and that adaptation as you go through these years, where you do have these different, moments where, obviously those early Flatlanders, that's like that, this like real folksy. You mentioned Woody Guthrie, almost in that kind of sense. And then, those first couple solo records, it's like this country rock, brand new spanking, like, a lot of great guitar playing and honky tonkness. And then you dip into these other little moments, like obviously like Hi-Res, like that's something onto itself. And then fast forward to like now, we'll go to like now, where one of the records that I've really loved is been Panhandle Rambler, because I feel like you really just paint the Southwest in a way that's not been done. It's just kind of rarely been done, where you're using these different guitar players and different kind of string instrument guys to capture a different essence of West Texas. What specifically on like that record, can you take me back to like whenever you were kind of putting that together, those songs together, and wanting to use a lot of more, I guess, like the instrumentation, do a lot of the storytelling as well?
Yeah, that I wanted to first of all kind of open the record with some music that would tell you where you were.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always thought that's kind of important to, not always important, but most of the time, to let the listener know where he is. He doesn't have to say anything or do anything, but maybe just 3 notes of a guitar or something, that just, okay, I'm close to Odessa, but maybe further south,
Mm-hmm.
and then kind of nurture that, add to the story. This maybe a person comes into the story, almost like a book is, where it's opened up to a little by little, you get an opening, you get a new page to churn over, and not make it let it become kind of corny and unbelievable, but just add just enough to where just maybe a car goes by, or something that happens all the time, but it hadn't happened in your song yet, but somebody comes in, somebody knocks on the door, you hear a car screeching off in the distance, and blinking red light, just adding things as it goes through music and through developing your characters. And that Panhandle Rambler, I think I had worked on things like Letter to Laredo and records like that, but I think Panhandle Rambler kind of opened the door to kind of controlled emptiness, more so than anything I'd ever done before.
Yeah, that that record just feels like it's a lot of songs where, as you mentioned, you're kind of putting the listener into these places within those first few seconds with instrumentation, and they're all like scene setters in a lot of ways, and you kind of highlight some of like the ordinariness of the magic in the ordinariness in a sense, because like sometimes we don't take the time to just look at just the beauty in the ordinary, or the just commonplace, and I think a lot of that record mixes those two worlds together.
Yeah, I do too. I'm glad that you see that, because that's ordinary is a good word for. It's kind of like that movie, The Last Picture Show.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is just kind of ordinary, and everybody's trying to be not too noticeable in everything they do and anything they say, but underneath it all, there's something brewing that is, not ordinary. It's, it's like, it's serious, and you got to take it seriously in order to get to the next step of the story.
Right. You mentioned Odessa, or south of Odessa in a sense a minute ago. One of those early Flatlander records that ended up getting reissued was the Odessa tapes. And I think that, like, so I'm from Fort Stockton originally, and it's hard to understand, like, or like fathom Odessa being a place where people would go and record music. But you hear stories about it kind of being more of a recording town than anyone I think now would ever imagine. What was it like back then, as far as, that being a place where, you'd go and cut a record or cut some songs, and other artists were going there?
Well, we had, I don't know exactly the steps and all, but we had gone down from Lubbock. Somebody wanted to put up some money. The guy in Nashville who we were thinking about recording with, Shelby Singleton, had recorded some stuff, and we wanted to we wanted to do it in Odessa, because we had heard of the studio that Tommy Alsop, who was a great guitar player that traveled with Buddy Holly and Roy Orbison and all. He had, after Buddy died, he put his money that he had made in recording in a different studio in Dallas, and he put it into the Odessa studio way out on the north end of Odessa, in an everyday looking concrete box with a gravel front yard and pickups parked all around it. Didn't look like anything, no sign or anything. And he had put up the money to put together a collection of songs, and that became the Odessa tapes. And we only had, like, I think 5 hours, 4 hours or something. Then we finished and drove back to Lubbock, and that became our demo tape. And it took me forever to find a tape recorder that would play that tape, because it was a 3-track. and nobody made 3 tracks anymore. There's an old 3-track Ampex that they used to use in Nashville a lot, that have a stereo set, left and right, and then in the middle have a solo where they'd put the vocal, so the vocal didn't fight with any of the other instruments. And that was what Tommy Alsop had put in his studio, and we got to spend an evening listening to it and recording there, which later turned into the Nashville recordings. So yeah, that was kind of a big part of, you know, how those records came about, and we were just developing inside of ourselves, just developing stories that were part of West Texas.
Right. That's something else right there where that I've always really loved how you guys almost have like this shared song catalog where, you know, songs get cut by each of you solo, and then maybe like on a Flatlander record, and then maybe 20 years later, and then maybe 20 years later for an acoustic live record or whatever the case. And these songs, they may be the same song, but they have these little worlds that in which they sound differently.
Yeah.
I've always really liked how to see like how a song grows and in that capacity. Has that been like have you guys had any conversations about that as far as like, oh, you know, like what's the not necessarily like, you know, what's the best version of this song, but like, oh, you know, I never saw this in that song until you did it, insert on this record, or what's that been like?
On this current record, there's actually a song that two separate versions of a song called Butch's song. Anyway, there's two different versions of it on this new one, and we evolve over time. Sometimes songs get better, and sometimes they get worse. You know? So we have to be careful, but we have recorded different songs, and some of them quite different whole meanings, you know, same music but different meaning. And that's what I've spent my whole life doing, is listening to tracks and finding kind of that inner story, that inner secret part of the song, and try to bring it out to where it's you know, understandable and where it doesn't get in the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's something to, you know, maybe the secret in some of these songs is listening to the 4 or 5 versions of If You Were a Bluebird. That it's somehow like it's one of those Venn diagrams. It's somewhere in the middle of all those songs.
Yeah.
So
that song probably has dozens of different versions that we have recorded as the Flatlanders and my band, and, you know, different incarnations.
mm-hmm. The one thing that I mentioned 2 seconds ago that I find fascinating for you in your career is the Hi-Res record that you guys also then put out as B484, since you guys recorded that on a Macintosh before anyone was really doing that kind of thing. And
the Macintosh is just an Apple II.
Well, what I find fascinating about it is, like, you know, that's something that no one was doing at the time. And what like kind of drove you to kind of go in that route and trying to discover the maybe like what could be done on a computer?
Yeah, that was a funny time in my life where my brother had gotten an Apple II computer, and there was this little, you know, keyboard. In fact, I still got that old computer. But I was just fascinated that people started writing little sequences and stuff for it, and and it really fascinated me. And basically, I just took a year off and messed with that Apple computer, and that became the record before '84. And it didn't please the record company because my West Texas country fan base didn't feel included in that period of my life. But it was at a time when I had to kind of do something else because just the way that my life was going, I had to do something else. And so I spent a few months just putting the before '84 record together. And in fact, while I was doing it, I even got to meet a couple of the Apple guys who had invented the Apple computer, Steve Wozniak, and he was working on music things for the computer, and I met him at the University of Texas at a seminar one time, music seminar, and Steve was talking about the future of Apple computers, and this was like 1979, 78, something like that. It was very, very young technology, and it was, the beginning of it was completely useless and not worthwhile. But then as people started coming into the flow, I recorded a record that I still like to listen to because it's for me, it's kind of a breakthrough. It's kind of maybe to others, it might be a breakdown or something. But I found it really fascinating to put that record together because I was always growing up. The year 1984 was real big in my imagination as to what was going to happen, especially musically in the upcoming years. And he encouraged me to just look at all different things, not just, including computers. And sure enough, it turned into, I wanted to just work on it. And so I did very little explanation, and it was not until it actually came out that a lot of people kind of one big gasp in the room of, what the hell is he doing? And I found it kind of amusing because sometimes people take things too seriously when they should find out the boundaries of where you can go in something. And for me, that was a couple of
I kind of looked at as making y'all songs better, or your craft as a songwriter better, has been that you've also done things outside music. And I'm talking about, a couple of books that you've published, and like the play Chippy. There's a lot of you guys have had little other things that you guys have done. If that's like, Butch with photography, or Terry with all of his art, or even someone like Guy Clark building guitars. I think that works a different part of your brain. I don't know if like people do that enough now. It's something where like people just kind of get fixated on, I'm a songwriter and that's all I do kind of thing. When maybe if they looked further.
Yeah, then all your songs become about being a songwriter, which is not a exciting world to live in. It's basically a coffee table and a pen, like,
right. Yeah. Well,
and I like to kind of step over the boundaries. It gives me a sense of escape, for one thing, and it also gives me sense of opening up possibilities. And I think songwriting is all about opening up possibilities.
Mm-hmm. What's it been like as far as, a project like Chippy that, has all these other great artists that are on it? What was that collaborative process like? And how did you get involved with working on that?
Well, mainly working with Terry Allen on stuff. A friend of ours had run across somebody up in North Texas who was working on a piece about a prostitute that lived during the Dust Bowl days in West Texas, and she was a prostitute and also imagined herself kind of as a writer, and kept a diary. And there came a time when we talked to her about taking the diary and fleshing it out. And Terry called me and asked if I would look at the diaries and then read and then write some songs during I think it was, when was the Dust Bowl? The teens, 20s, somewhere like in there.
Mm-hmm.
And so the story kind of came out of this diary of this West Texas prostitute, and then the songs, different people came to work on them. Robert Earl Keen, Butch Hancock, Jimmie worked on it for the first year. We did it over a period of 2 years. And there again, it was an extension.
I want to break one more time to talk about our pals over at Desert Door and offer up a quick Thomas Mooney's Cocktail Minute. As I've said probably 100 times by now, by no means am I a seasoned mixologist or bartender, but these have been some of my Desert Door go-tos. For starters, let's just go with the tried and true ranch water. Pop the top off the Topo Chico, take a good swig, now pour in some Desert Door, and top it off by throwing in a few lime wedges. Never fails. This one, it's so simple it probably doesn't even count, but again, pretty foolproof. Do the exact same thing, but get you a Mexican Coca-Cola. I guess you can go with a regular one, but you're really cutting yourself short if you don't opt for the Mexican import variety. All right, here's the change-up you've been waiting for. Desert Door Sangria. This one is prime for when you have company coming over and you aren't wanting to just be over there making 6 different drinks at a time. What you'll need is some Desert Door, obviously, a bottle of red wine, honey, boiling water, apple cider vinegar, some cinnamon sticks, a couple of apples, and some thyme sprigs. I know that may sound intimidating, but trust me, it's worth the prep, and honestly, it's pretty easy. For starters, get you a punch bowl, add that honey, those cinnamon sticks, and the boiling water together. Now you're going to want to stir that all up and let it cool down for about an hour or so. Remember, patience is a virtue. Once that's done, add some Desert Door and stir vigorously. Now add the wine, the cider, and the vinegar, and continue stirring until it's equally mixed. Now slice those apples up and toss them in. Put in those thyme sprigs as well. Now you can pour that over some ice and you have a mighty fine sangria. Chef's kiss. Anyway, those have been some of my favorite go-tos as of late. And remember, Desert Door is as versatile as vodka and more refined, smooth, complex, and intriguing than tequila. It's rich in balance, and whether you decide to keep it simple or want to experiment, Desert Door is that perfect Texas spirit. There's plenty more recipes over at desertdoor.com as well. Check out the show notes for a link. All right, let's get back to the episode. Well, I guess like where I want to pick back up on is how, um, you guys were such a monumental band without like obviously having that career where I guess with the Flatlanders as far as having that name recognition. It was more of a, as that the 90s record, the reissue of sorts, more a legend than a band, but still like you guys had such an impact on the music of Lubbock and the music that was coming from West Texas. And you see that a lot in of even contemporary and modern artists that are coming out of Lubbock. Some reason they're still tapping into a lot of the things that you guys were singing about and writing about. And I'm talking, even folks who aren't necessarily from Lubbock, like Ryan Bingham, for example,
Yeah.
all just kind of like tapping in and looking at you guys as kind of like that foundational ground level of songwriting out here. And I know like, someone like Ryan has been, a guy who's looked up to you and has called on you and Terry for advice, that kind of thing. What's it like? I guess, seeing artists who are making music today, looking and drawing inspiration from the stuff that you guys have done.
Well, yeah, it's kind of like we're the best known unknown band. We always joke about we're the Flatliners, and but we have when we set off in the world, we didn't really have any purpose or ambition whatsoever. We weren't like setting out to win awards and travel the world and stuff, because we were really just fascinated with the music and how the same song can be sung in 4,000 different ways. And like the Dylan song that we did on the record, mm-hmm. She Belongs to Me. That's just kind of it's just another love song, but it's unlike any other one. Plus it includes strange twists that throw you under the bus almost, and then you say, how did that happen? And we were always looking for, and those kind of things happened in so many different songs. They happened in blues songs, just a phrase that would grab you and put you in a headlock, And so I really don't know how that happened. It was just, I think three guys bumped into each other, and they all three had a open mind and a curiosity to what could be or what can be, and we didn't look at where it would take us, or so many people now they say, oh yeah, I'm gonna, I want to get on this show, or I want to get this award or whatever, and it's I just kind of laugh at that, because that's not what a song is about.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of putting the cart before the horse in a lot of ways, if you're already looking for all those accolades before you even get started.
Before you even trip over your first stage chord. Yeah, I know. It's funny. I look at the people who influenced me, like going all the way back to when I was a teenager, when I was 12 or 13, like guitar players. I remember my my mother opening the door, heard a knock on the front door, and opened it, and there was a guy standing there with a steel guitar in a case, and asked if he could come in and give us a demonstration, you know, with a steel guitar demonstration. Where else in the world could you run into somebody giving a steel guitar demonstration door to door? And of course, my mother opened the door and let him in, and he set up this old Oahu amplifier. I know that because it had a palm tree on it, and gave a little demonstration of Hawaiian music, which, of course, later made its way to the kind of the Western music of the 20s and 30s. And so it was little things like that just happened. Another guy down the street had a Fender Reverb and a Strat, and he knew all the Ventures songs, but nobody knew him, or nobody knew the steel guitar player. It was just their love of music passed on, and it was things like that, things completely out of the blue, that I credit, my inspiration from.
Yeah, all these little moments that kind of just those
Just
nudges.
little moments.
Yeah, nudge you in one direction, and years later, it's interesting how you've kind of pinpointed them too. You've been able to reflect and pinpoint even just something that may have been, that door to door guy. How many times did he do that day? And
yeah.
Could he remember it? Yeah, maybe not. And
probably was turned away, 80% of the time. But I just kind of, and I think, Butch and Jimmie, they had that curiosity. Jimmie had that curiosity on how to, properly sing a Hank Snow song, and he had a kind of a spiritual guide that kind of gave him an otherworldly sound. And then Butch had just a uncanny ability to take just a regular song that had been written and turn it around to where it really was a song. Every word, every verse. He had an amazing sense of where rhymes come from and where they go, and all these things kind of added up into when the three of us got together as the Flatlanders. It was pretty amazing stuff, and although we didn't really even call ourselves the Flatlanders at first, because we didn't have much else to go on, but just that first record, we just took the songs that we thought fit together and then put them into a record. Later on, my band kind of did the same thing, only in a more rock kind of way, with the West Texas guys that were in the 50s, like Roy Orbison and Buddy Holly and all these incredible singers and songwriters. But I don't know if it was just luck of the era that I grew up in or what, but all of that just seemed to have a mystical mystical incantation.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned how, early on you could sense that Jimmie had tapped into this spiritual realm, if you will, right? Of the way he's able to draw something from a song, pull something from a song. And I know talking with Jimmie, he had mentioned that Butch was just right off the bat really profound at writing, and you mentioned it just then too. Do you feel like you were tapping into something early on too, or do you think
No,
you kind of had
it took me
a minute to?
just kind of a fascination with everything. I was just had always curious, and then discovering, because I was kind of out into the world after my daddy died. I I had to find a way to make a living and support my family, and got a job at the Chicken Box on 34th Street across the street from Tom and Bingo's. I don't know what it is now, but I got a job there after school, washing dishes, and then I kind of, the thrill of that didn't last very long, and so I started playing more, and in doing so, I discovered that Lubbock had a lot of kind of underground musicians that nobody knew about, but got together, and somehow, I don't know how, the communication back then was not so hot, but somehow I found like players and found Joe Don Davidson and his brother Wally and Gary Bass and just different people around town, TJ McFarland, that were curious musicians too, and we started a band called the Twilights, and it was kind of a doo-wop 50s band, kind of like okay, hang on just a second.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, so I don't. Okay, I'll wait for Carlos. Okay, wonderful. All right, see you. And we kind of just put some songs together, and actually became a little band that splintered off in different directions. It kind of started off a doo-wop 50s band, but then it kind of split off into the early forms of kind of when rock and roll splintered off into Buddy Holly and all the
mm-hmm.
new direction and everything with. So and that allowed me to quit my my dishwashing job and have a band that played kind of the nightclubs. We played the old speakeasies where Lubbock was dry at that time. It didn't have a strip outside the town like it kind of grew up to. And so we played the bootleg places. And there was one out on East 34th, way out, going towards Buffalo Lake, and all the old black joints that were on the east side of Avenue A. And Joe Don knew a lot of blues on his guitar, and so we were welcomed to the black clubs, which was a great thing, great inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, it was never really recorded because it was kind of unspoken that there was black music in Lubbock. It was real segregated town at that time.
Right.
But it was great for the music, which later on ended up bouncing off of clubs and ended up with me and Jesse Taylor asking Stubbs at Stubbs Barbecue if we could play at his place, just a jam session every Sunday night. And Stubbs said I was just about to go out of business and move to Denver, so y'all do what, as far as I'm concerned, this barbecue place is yours, because we drew a packed house. And from then it kind of spread out, and it took different forms, and people started finding out about it, and Lubbock had a way of being kind of a chameleon. It would change in the way that the wind blew and that the cotton grew, and there was one time I think my band shrunk all the way down to 3 people, and then another time it hovered at about 7 or 8 people. So it kind of changed with the times, and in doing so, with the music, and it's all a part of the process.
Mm-hmm. One of those larger than life characters that you played with, as far as the band getting up in numbers, is of course Bobby Keys.
I have to laugh every time I think about Bobby. He was a dear friend and one of the funniest people on the planet, and one of the most gargantuan hell raisers that I've ever met in my life, who could raise hell 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and play fabulously in between.
Mm-hmm.
He definitely changed the direction of the song, changed the set, and also it was just great fun to travel with. The Rolling Stones had kind of taken a break there for a couple of 3 years, and Bobby kind of moved back to West Texas and started playing with the Planets and with us, and then went on the road with us, and actually was instrumental in opening up an avenue that he talked to Keith Richards about, having our band open for the Rolling Stones, which was great fun. Bobby was inspirational for that piece of trivia.
Yeah, it's one of those things, when you watch some of those Rolling Stone documentaries and he's in there, and it's just kind of surreal thinking like, this guy's just a guy from West Texas, and he's making music on some of the most important records of our lives. It's just kind of surreal thinking about that.
Yeah, that was a great period of time. It's a wonder we made it through. But
yeah,
but 40 years of touring kind of makes you strong. Or I guess it's 50 years now.
Yeah. Well, like, what is I'm sure, like the nights, you can't go as hard as you were going in the 80s, but like, do you, and I guess like, this past year, that's maybe like the first break you've had in quite a long time. What's that been like?
Well, it was about as surreal as it could possibly be. I was used to, playing every night, traveling every day, doing, putting out a new record about every year or two, and writing constantly because I always had a kind of a voice in me that says, you got to finish this record, and I'd always kind of follow that voice. And then all of a sudden there was a big emptiness and no voice saying you had to do anything except just wonder where the world went. And for somebody who'd been on the road for that long, it was literally as if I had jumped to another world that was uninhabited and had to make sense out of it in a whole new different way, because there was not that immediate inspiration out there. You had to go and dig for it, dig deeply for it. And but after the initial shock of it, which lasted a few months or 6 months or something, I guess I started putting that period of time that I lost, kind of rediscovering where it came from and finding pieces of songs and all that I had kind of left by the roadside, and started putting a record together. And it became Love in the Midst of Mayhem. And it was a kind of a strange little record for me, but I just figured that the only thing that gets you through, if we didn't make it through in our physical world, was love. And so I kind of collected all the pieces of love songs and put them all together into a collection, and it actually became a record. And the new Flatlanders record is kind of part of that same thing that happened there, going from the mayhem to the going back to work.
Yeah, I was gonna actually ask that. How much of the last solo record, and Treasure of Love were kind of, from the same period, the same, not necessarily sessions, but close enough, I guess.
Well, yeah, they kind of came from. I've always, when recording a record and in my studio and stuff, I always just kind of leave the tape recorder on at different times, just to kind of collect ideas for possibly the next song or the next record or whatever came about. And some of these pieces, I started seeing that we had already recorded kind of the basic part of the song and just needed to finish it. And that's where Lloyd came in. And I just said, Lloyd, can you take this group of, I think it was 15 or 17 songs, can you take this and just make it cohesive, make it everything feel like it's part of the same planet, And Lloyd was fighting at the bit to do that, because we hadn't worked together for a while. And so that's kind of where Treasure of Love record came from.
Yeah, you mentioned a minute ago about, like, I guess the very, very early days of Flatlanders, as far as maybe not having that name. And I've heard that, like, you guys were initially wanting to go by Supernatural Playboys.
I think that was the first. Because Yeah, a friend of ours had a little natural grocery store that referenced kind of natural food and is I think it's called the supernatural grocery store, and that we just kind of tongue in cheek called the band the Supernatural Playboys, because Tommy's Hancock's band was the West Texas Playboys.
Yeah.
Well, I forget what it was called. It was anyway. Bob Wills's band was the Texas Playboys, and I think Tommy Hancock's was the Supernatural Family Band or something. Anyway, we kind of finally came to the band, the Flatlanders, as we were recording in Nashville. We were putting these songs down, and the transcriber in the studio said, what are the names of these songs, and where do they, what is the name of the band? And we had to make it up there in the studio. Steve Wesson said, well, I think Supernatural, no, the Flatlanders. And we went, of course. What else? That was in about 1969 or 70 when we were recording. So it just kind of slapped us in the face.
Yeah. Any regrets? Any hindsight? Wishing that you guys would have went by Supernatural Playboys instead?
Well, no. I think that would have caused more fights than anything else.
Yeah. I was gonna get you out on this last question here, and that's obviously, people always think of Flatlanders as this, super group of sorts, and there's been plenty of super groups that have come and gone, as far as, the Highwaymen and Texas Tornadoes, and well, there's this one little group another little super group that you were part of that was just kind of there for a minute, and that was the Buzzin' Cousins. And I was gonna ask like how you got involved with that and kind of the origin story there.
Yeah, I got a call from somebody, James McMurtry or Dwight Yoakam, or one of those guys who were talking about James McMurtry had written, I guess, a screenplay with music that went through it, and we got calls. I got a call from James McMurtry saying, "You want to come down and play on this record that's going to be the soundtrack for this book?" And it was a great cast of musicians, and I said, "Of course, I'd love to do that." And yeah, that's basically how it came about. And we flew to, I guess it was Bloomington, and worked in John's studio, and it became a record, and it actually won a country music award I think it was about the same year as another really fun band that around that same time was Los Super 7. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
But started out with, Doug Song, Flaco Jimenez, Augie Myers, all these great Tex-Mex, mostly San Antonio guys, but a lot of Austin guys too. And and that one won a Grammy. That was a big surprise for us, because we never. That's the last thing we expected. We were just doing it for the sheer challenge of it. And every time a project like that comes about, like Chippy came about like that, and when it comes about and shows its face as a kind of a possible music landing place, then I always love to work on things like that because they're kind of show you a new light.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Obviously, like, all music is, at the end of the day, some kind of collaborative effort, but in those situations where you're getting with other, like-minded songwriters or artists that are also writing and creating, that must also just kind of, invigorate what you're doing solo or what you end up bringing back to Flatlanders or whatever. It must always just kind of be an interesting case of seeing how other people create.
Yeah, I think the Flatlanders kind of encouraged that because it was kind of a dropping off place for, different ideas that could be worked on by, a small group of like-minded musicians and songwriters. And it kind of had a way of drawing itself to that over the years.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Joe, I think that's about all the questions I have right now for you. It's been just a pleasure hearing all these stories and kind of picking your mind here.
Yeah, I hope I didn't repeat myself too much, but I'm glad you asked the questions you did because it gave me kind of a different angle to look at, and it gave me a different kind of a side angle, I guess you'd say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and everybody's got kind of their own angle of when you listen to music, you see it from one point, but a lot of times you can see it from all different sides. So anyway, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah. All right, that is it for this one. Giant, huge thanks to Joe for taking some time. Treasure of Love by the Flatlanders. It's out this Friday. If you haven't listened to the previous episode with Jimmie, go ahead and do so. Be sure to check out the next episode, which is with Butch, on Friday. Check out our presenting partners over at Desert Door and the Blue Light Live. Subscribe to New Slang if you haven't just yet. And yeah, we'll see you later.